On this Saturday night, Israeli forces intensify strikes in Lebanon and Gaza. What it means for the region's fragile stability. As the IDF prepares for significant retaliation against Iran. A mother and her child. Police in Montreal confirmed the identity of the victims of a suspicious fire.
Out of the 25 years I've been doing this, I've never seen anything like that in my life.
Hurricane Helene's trail of devastation as search efforts uncover heartbreaking losses. And homemade hovercraft.
Piece by piece, you put it together and it starts looking like something.
The built-from-scratch creation and how it could inspire the next generation of inventors.
Global National, reporting tonight, Nitu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with the latest escalation in the Middle East, where tensions are flaring on multiple fronts, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian crisis. Israeli forces have expanded their ground incursion in Lebanon, raising concerns of a wider regional conflict. And airstrikes have increased in both Lebanon and Gaza with the looming anniversary of October 7th. Israel's military says a strike on southern Beirut killed another Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah's presumed successor, just a week after his predecessor was killed. Also today, Israeli airstrikes were fired deeper into Lebanon's territory, killing a Hamas commander and his family in the country's north. The region is on edge as both sides exchange fire, fueling concerns about a potential escalation involving Iran. The world is on alert, awaiting Israel's response to Iran's recent missile attack. Jeff Semple is in Jerusalem and begins our coverage tonight. Jeff?
Nithu, every Saturday for the past year now, thousands of Israelis have taken to the streets calling for the Israeli hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza to come home. And the rally on this particular day carried even greater symbolic significance, coming now on the eve of a somber anniversary. Monday marks exactly 1 year since the Hamas attack on October the 7th, the deadliest attack in this country's history that killed 1,200 Israelis. And 1 year later, it's believed that around 100 are still being held captive in Gaza. And a lot of the anger that we see in these protests is directed squarely at the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, for failing to secure a deal to bring those hostages home.
He keeps fighting, he keeps start war every place he found. I was really afraid from war with Iran, and we are there. We were in Gaza, in Lebanon, and now in Iran. Where can he go more than this?
We saw more intense fighting inside of Lebanon today. The Israeli military said that it killed 2 senior Hamas leaders inside Lebanon over the past 24 hours. And a separate strike on Friday reportedly targeted a senior Hezbollah leader, Hassan Safiuddin, widely considered to be the heir apparent to Hassan Nasrallah, the longtime leader of Hezbollah. Now, it's unclear tonight whether Safiuddin is dead or alive. Reports citing Hezbollah sources say that they have lost contact with him, that he is unreachable, and that the Israelis believe that he was indeed killed. Over the past few days, Israel says that 250 Hezbollah members have been killed, including 21 commanders, as Israel works to decimate the leadership structure of that Lebanese militant group. And while the war in Gaza remains controversial here, with those hostages hanging in the balance, Israel's incursion into Lebanon is wildly popular here.
All civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side.
And is providing a political boost to the Israeli Prime Minister. Benjamin Netanyahu gave a televised address this evening, and in it he said that Israel is now defending itself on 7 fronts against what he called the enemies of civilization, listing them off, including Hamas in Gaza and the Houthis in Yemen. But behind it all, said Netanyahu, is Iran. The world is still watching and waiting to see how Israel will respond to Iran's ballistic missile attack last week, but any Israeli retaliation is widely expected to wait until after the October 7th commemorations. Nithu?
Jeff Semple in Jerusalem tonight. Thanks, Jeff. Civilian casualties are mounting on all fronts. As Jeff mentioned, nearly 2,000 people have died since the fighting erupted in Lebanon. Following the Hamas attacks, 1,200 fatalities have been reported in Israel. In the West Bank, more than 700 people have died. And today, more deadly Israeli strikes hit Gaza, where the Hamas-run health ministry reports 42,000 people have died since the start of Israel's war against Hamas. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is once again advocating for peace and a ceasefire, while also calling for tougher penalties and sanctions on Iran.
We need to make sure that we see de-escalation, and we need to continue to hold Iran to account for its funding and organizing behind the scenes of Hamas, of Hezbollah, of the Houthis.
Trudeau made that appeal from Paris alongside Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, who urged Canadian citizens in Lebanon to leave immediately.
You are offered a seat, please take it. We know things are difficult, but we want to make sure that your safety and yours and the one of your family is ensured.
She says about 1,000 Canadians have escaped the bombing and violence on flights chartered by Canada from Beirut to Istanbul. Additional flights are scheduled for Monday and Tuesday. So far, 6,000 Canadians have registered to receive updates about the available flights. More than 45,000 Canadians were in Lebanon when the violence began to escalate last month. Chartered flights for Australian nationals who were in Lebanon arrived in Cyprus today with 2 planes from Beirut transporting about 500 people. These evacuees are among the thousands of foreign nationals the UN member state has been preparing to assist as more countries try to get their citizens out. Merecedes Stephenson is in Cyprus monitoring the contingency plans and preparations and is keeping track of what Israel's next move could be. Mercedes, what is the wider region expecting?
Nisu, all eyes are on Israel as the world awaits Israel's retaliatory strike against Iran. Now that the Jewish high holiday of Rosh Hashanah has concluded here in the Middle East, it's widely expected that Israel's strike is imminent in coming days. There's a number of targets that Israel could choose to bomb, including Iran's nuclear facilities, their oil fields, or a number of military facilities. This week on the West Block, I spoke with a retired Israeli general who is also the former head of Israel's National Security Council about what he thinks the planning process will look like and what the potential targets for Israel could be in Iran.
I think that if no real change might occur, then Israel will probably strike back in the next few days. The targets are not necessarily going to be the nuclear facilities, which are well protected, but Israel can cause real significant damage to Iran if we attack other possible targets. And the most maybe attractive ones are the energy facilities. Iran economy relies very much on the export of oil, and export of oil is a very, very sensitive and vulnerable target. And Israel can cause a significant damage to this sector, which is not less important than the nuclear facilities.
And you can watch the full interview tomorrow morning on the West Block right here on Global. In the U.S., Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump returned to Butler, Pennsylvania today, holding a rally at the same site where he was nearly assassinated in July. It was one of 2 such incidents during this election campaign. Trump made his return. As Bianca Facchnei reports, with exactly 1 month until Americans head to the polls, the race between Trump and Kamala Harris is tighter than ever.
3 months after he was almost assassinated, former President Donald Trump is back in Butler, Pennsylvania.
As I was saying,
the line for attendance started Friday night. On top of the former president, the guest list includes his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, as well as Tesla and ex-CEO Elon Musk. Also joining is the family of Corey Comparator, who was killed during the July shooting.
Part of the messaging from Trump and Vance is that the world is literally on fire in some places and figuratively on fire in others. And what you need is a strong man in the face of that who's willing to stand up and be brave, because bravery is needed. And this is a way of visually demonstrating that. The location becomes the message.
While the venue may be the same, a lot has changed since the last rally in Butler. President Joe Biden dropped out of the 2024 race just 8 days afterward, ultimately replaced by Vice President Kamala Harris. And 2 months later, Trump faced a second assassination attempt in Florida while playing golf. On top of a very different race, the rally comes as the southeast U.S. recovers from one of the deadliest hurricanes in history. The government's response to Hurricane Helene has become an election issue, too.
They stole the FEMA money just like they stole it from a bank so they could give it to their illegal immigrants.
The White House immediately hit back, calling the comment a lie. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris is traveling to North Carolina to be briefed on recovery efforts. Now, new polling from Real Clear Politics shows that Harris has a 2-point lead over Trump. But that same new data also shows that all of the swing states, including Pennsylvania, remain toss-ups. Bianca Facchnei, Global News, Washington.
In Montreal, there are still many questions over the deadly fire that tore through a century-old building Friday morning. Police have confirmed the 2 who died were a mother and her child. Investigators say the blaze is suspicious. Felicia Perillo has more on what we know so far.
Well, basically, that's the window there where she was.
Montreal photographer Sean Mullett still can't believe what he saw after he was awoken from his sleep early Friday morning. But he says what's worse is what he heard.
I heard a blood-curdling scream, a woman screaming over and over again.
He says he watched as flames ravaged the building that housed a restaurant and cafe on the main floor and a 19-room hostel above it. It took the Montreal Fire Department until early Saturday morning to get the blaze under control, about 24 hours after the fire first broke out.
25 people are believed to have been present in the building when the fire broke out. 23 of these 25 people have been accounted for. 2 of these people were injured. 1 was taken to hospital and is still receiving treatment. And as mentioned, 2 people unfortunately died.
Police say the bodies of a 43-year-old woman and her 7-year-old daughter were recovered from the rubble Friday night. Both were French nationals. Police wouldn't share any details about the potential cause of the fire, but said it was suspicious in nature. The fire is eerily similar to one that occurred last year less than 1 kilometer away. 7 people died in that fire. All were staying in short-term rentals. Emile Benamor owns both that building and the one that caught fire on Friday. In a statement to Global News, he expressed his sincere condolences and said any information that could lead to the arrest of the suspects or to an understanding of the cause of this criminal act must be shared with the police authorities in order to prevent a reoccurrence. At a news conference Saturday afternoon near the scene of the fire, Quebec Public Security Minister François Bonnardel said the investigation into the fire could be combined with the March 2023 fire.
So we will see in the next weeks and the next days if it's possible to combine these two inquiries.
In hopes of getting more answers to what led to these tragedies. Felicia Perillo, Global News, Montreal.
The death toll from Hurricane Helene rises. Coming up, the trail of devastation as communities struggle to recover. In Bosnia, torrential rain has caused severe flooding and landslides. At least 16 people are dead, dozens more are missing. Homes are damaged and roads are destroyed. It's the worst flooding in the country in a decade. The disaster follows a summer of drought, which saw lakes and rivers run dry. In the U.S., the search for survivors continues in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. More than 200 people have died. Hundreds are still missing in the mountains of North Carolina. And as Nathaniel Dove explains, the economic impact of this disaster could make it one of the costliest in U.S. history.
As the floodwaters recede and debris cleared, more tragedy is revealed.
What comes out first are air bubbles from the body, and those float to the surface. And when they break the surface tension, the dog can smell that.
They're searching for human remains after Hurricane Helene.
Out of the 25 years I've been doing this, I've never seen anything like that in my life.
No power or cell service makes it difficult to coordinate and to know how many people are missing. The youngest of the dead so far, 2 one-month-old twins and their mother in Georgia.
This is the living room. You can see all of it's destroyed.
Floodwaters washed away Alvin Stiles' house and robbed him of his wife. Again.
I had her urn and her stuff, all her jewelry and stuff in my house, and I've lost all of that.
An expert says Helene could be one of the most expensive disasters in U.S. history.
These kind of recovery processes are truly long-term. They can take a decade or more.
Small towns hidden away along mountain roads present logistical challenges, Gerber tells Global News, but, he adds, they also have their own strengths.
Smaller, more socially connected communities sometimes perform better than larger communities.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. Thank you, brother. Love you.
You're welcome, man.
A stranger offered Stiles a trailer and generator.
Give us a few more minutes.
Thank you, sir.
Washington saying it's given out more than $45 million as of Friday. The Homeland Security Secretary said Wednesday the U.S. has enough money allocated for Helene recovery, but not for the rest of hurricane season.
That fund is essentially depleted at present.
Congress doesn't sit to vote on more support until after the election, and the National Hurricane Center has warned of another storm that could become a deadly hurricane and threaten Florida in coming days. Nathaniel Dove, Global News, Toronto.
Escalating violence in Sudan. Ahead, the army launches its largest operation against paramilitary forces. After nearly 18 months of war, the fighting in Sudan is intensifying. This week, the Sudanese army launched its largest offensive yet against the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces in the capital. The country is home to one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. As Redmond Shannon reports, outside countries, including the United Arab Emirates, are being accused of stoking the violence.
More than half of Sudan's population of 50 million are facing crisis levels of hunger. Trapped in a war essentially between two feuding generals. The paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, fighting against the Sudanese armed forces.
People need to understand Sudan is the single largest humanitarian crisis in the world.
The situation is at its worst in Darfur region, where there are fears of an ethnically targeted massacre if the RSF take over the city of El Fasher and a nearby refugee camp.
We have to prepare for the worst outcome. And the worst outcome is 1 million people being trapped in a kill box.
United Nations investigators say there is credible evidence the United Arab Emirates is using an airfield in neighbouring Chad to funnel arms to the RSF, something the UAE denies. A New York Times investigation specifically alleged that a field hospital at the airfield operated by the Emirates Red Crescent is being used as a cover for the military intervention. The International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, IFRC, told Global News it was not involved in the Emirati operation and not aware of it until media coverage. It says it was not possible for its team to access the hospital as it was patrolled by Chadian security forces. 2 months after the war began last year, the Emirates granted Chad a $1.5 billion loan. When Global News asked the Emirates Red Crescent about the hospitals, it said it is disturbing that its humanitarian efforts could be subjected to false allegations or politicised. US President Joe Biden met with his Emirati ally President bin Zayed last month, a day before he said this at the UN.
The world needs to stop arming the generals.
But there is little sign anything has changed. Iran, Egypt and others have also been accused of stoking the war in the resource-rich nation. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Homemade hovercraft. Next, an Alberta teacher's love for tinkering. Why he built this one-of-a-kind invention from the ground up. It's not often you see a hovercraft gliding across the water. Well, that's what an Alberta teacher made from scratch, hoping his students might be inspired. Global's Nicole Stilger has his story.
Over the years, I've been building different things.
Taking a walk around Robert Timofichuk's property in Murnum, Alberta, it doesn't take long to learn he's an inventive guy.
All these parts here were hand fabricated.
He built this wood processor out of an old swather.
Outcomes here is your wood split apart into 6 pieces.
But in this trailer is easily one of the more unique and fun things he's built. A homemade hovercraft.
There was no blueprint for this one, and essentially just by intuition.
It took him about 1,800 hours over the course of a year to build. A teacher by day, he worked on it every evening and weekend.
Piece by piece, you put it together and it starts looking like something.
The hovercraft is made from a mishmash of parts. The cab is from a 1997 Jeep Cherokee. The engine came from a 1985 Toyota Celica.
In here, there is some Volkswagen heated seats because, you can't be zipping around in the fall and not have heated seats, right?
A hovercraft, especially one like this, needs patience and support. Thankfully, his wife Shelley was on board.
It definitely took a leap of faith, and we were still married after that year, which was just amazing.
The math, science, and shop teacher hopes his story inspires others, especially his students.
It was built, part by part, and anyone could do anything if they put their mind to it.
Now, that ain't fun. I don't know what it is.
Nicole Stilger, Global News.
Oh, so much fun. That is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada is more fun. This paraglider at Sylvan Lake, Alberta. Thanks so much for watching and hope you can join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.